In the summer of 1995, I graduated from college. I didn't have any plans at the time, and I wasn't sure what I should do. And so I graduated on a Saturday. On Sunday, I put all my stuff in storage. Now, in the summer of 1995, the things that accounted for all of my stuff was my mattress, my motorcycle, and my Bob Marley poster. And that was about it. Graduated on Saturday, put all my stuff in storage on Sunday, and on Monday, I joined the Circus. This circus, the Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers Circus. I spent 6 months on the road with this circus. I saw 400 circus shows in a row without a day off. And as you can imagine, over the course of 6 months of on the road, you start to meet and see and learn a lot of interesting things. For example, this is where I lived, in that semi-truck. In fact, half of the back of that semi-truck with 7 other guys. There were 8 of us in half of that truck. The camper across the way was where the ringmaster lived. That was his truck, that was his camper, and he was a particularly interesting guy as well. This guy was super interesting. This is Charlie. He served our meals 3 times a day. Should you choose to eat them, Charlie would serve you your meals, and you were taking a bit of a risk by eating Charlie's meals 3 times a day. The other fascinating thing that happened at the circus was a lot of interesting people would come to see the circus, not just the folks that worked there, but people who actually came and loved it. For example, that's me in the red shirt. In case you're wondering, this was a long time ago. Time has not been particularly kind to my hairline in the last 27 years. But the gentleman leaning on my shoulder, that's Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. He came to the circus every year. And we got to meet him and we got to hang out, and it was super cool. I really enjoyed that. By far, the most fascinating person that I met during those 6 months on the road with the circus was this guy. This is the human cannibal, and you can see him there, very, very tiny at the top, climbing into the cannon. This guy had a sweet gig. We did 2 shows a day, every day. His act was 2 minutes long. That means that in total, he worked 4 minutes a day, every day. That's a pretty good gig, right? For 2 shows. Even if we did 3 shows on Saturdays, he worked 6 minutes a day. What that means is that my friend, the human cannibal here, had a lot of downtime, right? I also had a lot of downtime while we were on tour with the circus, and we got to talking, and I befriended the human cannibal. And one of those conversations led me to wonder, how does one become the human cannibal? Right? What's the career path that you follow, that you end up here? Right? What do you put on your LinkedIn profile? What do you put on your CV to say, you know, my career path is going to end up here at the top of a cannon being shot across a tent? And so I asked him, I said, how did you become the human cannibal? And he told me the story. And I'm going to tell you that story. Right? As you might imagine, how this guy became the human cannibal starts with the previous human cannibal, as these things go in the circus. And to tell you the story, I have to explain to you how this contraption works, okay? Obviously, this is not a real cannon, okay? It's mounted on a truck, as you can see, and it's spring-loaded. There's a spring at the end of it. They cock the spring, the human cannibal slides down into the cannon, the ringmaster pushes a button, there's a puff of smoke, the spring gets released, it pushes the guy out of the cannon, and he lands on the other side of the tent in a net. That's how it works. Now, the way that they knew where to put the net night after night was pretty simple. Every 2 days, we'd end up in a new location. And they would set up the tent, and then the previous human cannibal and his team would drive the red truck into the tent, park it in the same spot every time. They would aim the cannon, and they would load the cannon with a dummy or a mannequin that weighed exactly the same as the previous human cannibal. Okay? Then they would fire the cannon, and wherever that dummy landed, that's where they put up the net. And that worked for years, until one day. One day, the cannonball truck was late arriving to the next destination where we were setting up the tent. And so they didn't have time to test the cannon that particular night. And they said, don't worry about it, we'll do it in the morning before the first show. They took the dummy out, they left it outside overnight, and it rained that night. The dummy got soaked with water. The next day, they did exactly what they had done year after year. They drove the truck into the tent, they parked it in the same spot, they aimed the cannon, they put the water-soaked dummy into the cannon, they shot it. Wherever it landed, that's where they put the net up. That afternoon, in front of 4,000 children, that's how many children fit in the tent, the previous human cannonball got into the cannon, waved goodbye to 4,000 children. The ringmaster hit the button, and he sailed way past the net. Right? Now, the good news is he didn't die, but he was tragically injured. And when he went back to Florida to recuperate, and Florida, by the way, is where all circuses come from. True story. When he went back to recuperate, he saw his pool boy. His pool boy fit that kind of that all-American profile, blonde hair, blue eye, fit, played American football. He said, "How would you like a promotion?" He goes, "Instead of being a pool boy, you could be the next human cannonball, work 4 minutes a day, make a bunch of money." And that's how my friend here became the human cannonball. Right? Got the gig, got the promotion. Now, why did I tell you that story? My guess is it's probably the first circus story you heard today. But there's another reason. What I just demonstrated to you was the basic structure of every compelling story. It's the story arc, right? Or the narrative. And there are 3 components to every compelling story, right? We start off with the situation, right? And I painted that picture for you. I joined the circus. Why was I there? Who did I meet? Right? What were the circumstances? What did I learn from talking to those folks? We then introduce the complication. Right? What's the challenge? What's the obstacle? Right? What do we have to get through? Right? Well, the human cannonball got tragically injured. We got to figure out what to do next. Right? And then finally, we got to the solution. The pool boy. The pool boy ends up being the solution of this. And this is the basic story arc of every compelling story. We start with a situation, there's a challenge, there's a complication in the middle of it, and then we eventually achieve the solution that we are going to that tells us that we've actually overcome the complication. And you hear these stories all the time, everywhere, they're all around you. For example, this is the Shot on iPhone campaign. Apple is very, very good at telling compelling stories. They create a situation, and they put you in the middle of it, right? You're in this great scene. You're in a market, you're at a concert, you're at a festival, you're on top of a mountain, you're seeing a sunset, and you want to become this great photographer. That's the complication. How do I take this amazing photo? How do I capture this particular moment? And the solution, of course, is the iPhone. It's going to make you a great photographer, right? You are the hero of this particular story. It's super compelling because you get to overcome the obstacle and reach the solution, right? The benefits of it are super clear, how we're going to make you that hero, right? How we're going to make you a better version of you at the end of this story. Compare that with Samsung advertisements. Typically speaking, Samsung advertisements don't put you in the story. You're not the center of the story. The phone is. Right? The phone is the star. What's the situation? What's the complication? Well, the phone has a 175 million megapixel camera. Okay. What does that mean for me? How does that help me get to a better version of myself? You are missing from that particular narrative. Now, it's really easy to get lost in all of these narratives, right? We try to tell people our stories all the time, all day in various consequences. We're inundated with narratives. And it's really difficult to get people to pay attention to what it is we're trying to tell them because they're flooded with stories from friends, from families, from brands, from advertisements, from social media. How do we break through? How do we convince people to listen to the story that we'd like to tell them? Because people, generally speaking, do not care about your story. They don't care about your story because well, they've got their own ideas about this situation, right? I know you've got something to say, but I know about this, right? They have more important things to do. I'll get to your story in just a little bit, right? They've heard it all before. I know you want to tell me about this, but honestly, I can't take another story about that particular topic. Or because they have other priorities, right? Like, this is interesting that you got to tell me this, but I've got 10 other things I'm worried about right now. I don't want to hear your particular story. How do you get people to listen to your compelling story, right? How do you get take them through that particular narrative. The short of it is you have to make them care. And you make them care by making them the hero of your story. You put them in the center of that story, the center of the situation, the complication, and ultimately the solution. You explain the benefits, how at the end of the story, how I'm going to make you an even bigger hero in this particular case, right? And I'm going to take you on that journey with me, right? From where you are today, through the complication, to that particular solution. Now, the truth is, you cannot wing this. You can't just show up and start to tell this particular story in this compelling way. You have to design your story explicitly with intent, and there are lots and lots of ways to do that. For example, start off by considering who you're speaking to, right? Who's your target audience? How old are they? That's important, usually. What do they know? Right? Are they tech savvy? Are they subject matter experts? Right? What is it that they know that you can help them become better at? How is your story relevant to them? Right? What do they care about? And is it the same thing that you care about? What language do they speak? I'm not talking about French or English or Spanish or Japanese. Right? Do they speak technical language? Right? Do they speak the language of people that you don't understand? Right? How do you get them to pay attention? And then ultimately, start to think about what makes them heroes, right? What makes them heroes in their professional setting? What makes them heroes in their personal setting, right? What is it that you can help them become at the end of your narrative? That should help them care. That should help them pay attention as we move forward. As you start to tell your story, make sure that you set them up for what it is you're about to tell them. We call this signposting, right? Tell them what you're going to say. I'm going to teach you how to tell a compelling story. Then say the thing. Here is how you tell a compelling story. And when you finish, you recap everything that you just said. Here's what I told you about telling a compelling story. You set their expectations, and then you nail those expectations every single time as you move forward through the narrative, right? From the situation, through the complication, to the solution. Your story has to have an opinion. Otherwise, why share it? Right? You have to be able to create some kind of a conflict in the conversation that makes people pay attention. This is my opinion, and this is what I hope you take away. Right? Maybe I'm trying to inform you. Maybe I'm trying to sell you something. Maybe I'm just trying to make you laugh. Right? Maybe I'm trying to get you to share my story when you leave from here. Maybe I'm trying to get you to do something for me, to teach you something, or maybe I'm just trying to change your mind and convince you that a hot dog is indeed a sandwich, after all. Right? Have an opinion as you tell your story. Putting the pieces together of the story becomes far more powerful, flows better, if you connect the causes and effects for your audience. Don't make them do the work, right? When you list off a set of sequential events, people get bored. They don't understand the connection between those events. They have to do the work for you. Instead, you should do the work for them. Let me show you an example of exactly what I mean. Let's take a look at this, okay? The first thing I did when I got up here is I told you my story, and I told you the cause and the effect. I graduated with no plan, so I joined the circus. Therefore, I met some crazy characters like the human cannonball, but his story was nothing like I'd imagined. Right? Cause, effect, come with me on this journey. As opposed to this, I graduated, then I joined the circus, and then I met the human cannonball, and then he told me how he got his job. Right? Fundamentally different way. You care a lot less about the second one. The first one grabs your attention much more quickly. It's absolutely important. As you think about finishing up your story, make sure that there's always a takeaway for the audience, right? You want to teach them something new. You want to give them a new perspective. Maybe you just want to give them a new joke to tell, right? Maybe you want to give them a new appreciation for a project or an initiative that you're working on and that you care about. To do that, you must keep the story practical. Keep it down to earth. Give me something to take away. Give me something that I can walk away with at the end of the talk. When the talk becomes very high level, very philosophical, people fail to grasp onto a concept. What was that talk about? I don't really remember. Right? At the end of every story that you tell, everyone who hears your story should be able to clearly answer the question, what did you learn? What's one thing you could take away from that story? Keep it practical. Finally, know where you're going, know how you're going to land the story, know your punchline. Storytelling is stand-up comedy. The situation, the complication, the solution. You have to understand exactly where you're going to land. You have to know where you're headed with that story and how you're going to get there. And you have to practice landing that joke, that ending, that solution until you get the timing right. Stand-up comics know this, and it's why the great ones are the best storytellers that we have. Look, Joseph Campbell dedicated his life to finding the core stories of the human race. And it's amazing. He found the same stories across time and cultures and history. It was consistent, whether it was in ancient Greece, the Celts, Judaism, Eskimos, you name it, the same story structure shows up time and time again. And why does every human culture across time and history care about the hero, care about them overcoming that complication and reaching the solution? Because it builds compassion. It makes people care. And that's the power of storytelling. Thank you very much.